Turn the lights back on. Wow. Retro electro tech. When real audio ruled the world.
Greetings once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Retro Ernest of Retro Electro Tech. So, I almost didn't publish this video or list it publicly. I was going to list it privately for the customer only because this is primarily a customer update. And I often battle with that and wondering whether or not I should, make a particular video public. Some I do, some I don't. Because the content gets a bit redundant. I do this day in and day out, and I know there's newer viewers to the channel, and maybe even some of you older subscribers and viewers and all that don't mind repeat content sometimes to kind of drive home the point, but this can get a bit redundant. But anyways, as you can see, obviously I decided to list this publicly, and what this is a Pioneer SX828 stereo receiver. And as you can see, I wasn't trying to create a pretty little sculpture here. I just wanted to get the control board here at a nice comfortable height that I can perform some servicing. So that's what I'm doing right now. That's the stage I'm in. And what's going on here is this unit came to me with some noise and a little intermittent behavior in terms of signal and so forth. When I first powered it up safely, of course, which, I'm not going to obviously get into that. I'm already past that stage. Of course, as you can see, it's already, set up and partially disassembled, of course. So the stage I'm in right now, yes, when I first powered it up and whatnot and started evaluating the signal, I piped in a 1 kilohertz tone and also was, trying to tune through the FM band, AM band, and all that stuff, the typical stuff, just seeing where I stand with, signal. And everything was working, but, things were a bit intermittent for sure. There was some crackle and pop that I mostly attribute to the controls, the controls being in rough shape. And the relay kicked in and out a couple times. Now I'm going to get into that a little bit more. I do think that perhaps the speaker select switch down here, speaker select on and off, may have been a contributing factor because this was in pretty rough shape as far as tarnish, oxidation, that sort of stuff. It was pretty nasty. And I noticed when I was manipulating the controls, the speaker select seemed to be a bit problematic and yeah, just kind of behaving funky. And there's some other things going on as well. But I really am not able at this point to track down for certain what the initial issue was with the relay kicking in and out, because it's after that it wasn't doing it anymore. And after I kind of exercised the controls a bit and, just kind of worked them, I did try to get that problem to repeat, and it never did. And I was, running it for several hours in the shop and, working the controls and all that. And other than the controls being a little bit staticky and just kind of, your typical dirty controls, I didn't experience any other problems. So anyways, let me go ahead and move forward. Okay, so I have the camera kind of in an awkward position, so I'll try to maneuver in here. So we're looking at the control board, all the tone controls and switches and all that. And things are cleaned up pretty nicely now. There was quite a bit of like white oxidation. Perhaps there was some moisture that settled in here over time. And I'm going to mention that the customer uses this receiver up at his camp here in Maine. And I am not sure, I'm going to ask him when I get a chance though, if this unit is left at his camp and not packed out during the winter. If it's left there, then that could be a problem because of the sub-freezing temperatures, obviously, during the winter here in Maine. And, exposure just to, not so favorable climate conditions, at least for the receiver. And, like I said, I did find some, that white kind of calcification or oxidation on this board, just kind of a light coating. I've already cleaned the board off real good. And, the potentiometers I flushed out thoroughly you know, a multi-flush cleaning with, you know, contact cleaner, as I've mentioned before, and, you know, where I really make it a point to flush the ports of these potentiometers out multiple times, let them drain out while I work the shafts over and over and over and over again and over again, to the point where literally, you know, your hands start tiring out, your wrist starts hurting and all that. And the reason I emphasize that is because you really have to do a thorough job, especially depending on the condition of the pots. Now, I didn't have the budget to, you know, start desoldering the pots from the board and, you know, disassembling them and all that. But, you know, I was able to work my, you know, my bent straw underneath, because the openings, the ports on these 3 pots here are facing the board. These ports are open on the volume pot here, but anyways, but I was able to flush them out very good and, you know, really work them and then re-inject some fader lubricant and all that and work them. So, and all these, you know, all these switches as well, you know, they're all flushed out and re-lubricated, board is clean and all that. The speaker switch, you know, here actually this is not the speaker switch, this is the mode switch for stereo, mono and all that, excuse me. But the speaker switch and the speaker switch on off, I don't know if, I'm looking in the back of the camera, I don't know if this, yeah, you can kind of see that in there. But down here is the speaker select and, you know, on-off switch. And anyways, the contacts on these, you know, these wafer type switches, these contacts here were quite dirty as far as, you know, oxidized tarnish. They really needed to be cleaned, and what I was using for that is some solvent. You know, sometimes I'll use like 99% anhydrous alcohol, or, you know, whatever the case. I just use contact cleaner and with a brush and just really scrub the contacts thoroughly but carefully as to not bend anything. So really got in there and just really polished up the you know, the contacts and all that good stuff. So that's all squared away. The controls are actually completed. Actually, no, they're not. There's a couple of switches. There's an FM muting switch. I don't know if yeah, over here there's the FM muting switch and the what do you call it? The dimmer for the dial lights. You know, the dimmer button. So, anyways, but those are the only switches that I need to clean. And one more thing actually that I am going to clean on this, and I'm not, you know, the unit is not positioned where I can show you, but the tuning capacitor, I'm going to clean that as well. So, you know, that's a stage that I'm in right now, and let me go ahead. What I will do is evaluate the controls on my analog meter. And I've demonstrated in videos before that I like to use an analog meter, you know, with a needle, so that I can sweep the ranges of the potentiometers and watch the needle and make sure that it's transitioning through the pot's range, you know, that it's sweeping back and forth nice and smooth, that there's no jitter or any indications of, you know, intermittency or dead spots or whatever the case. So let me go ahead and get to that. One other thing worth mentioning is the customer uses this receiver at his camp here in Maine. Now, I'm not certain if he packs it up for the winter. I'm going to ask him that, and stores it in more favorable conditions. But here in Maine, as a lot of you know, it gets very, very, very cold. And if this unit is sitting in sub-freezing temperatures at a camp, then that's not a good thing, because, you know, there's components that shouldn't be subjected to temperature extremes in one direction or the other, or both, because of the problems it causes with expansion and contraction of you know, the circuit boards and what have you. Not to mention with electrolytic capacitors, you have you know, a chemistry within, a chemical electrolyte that just via age alone causes degradation. But you add, unfavorable climate conditions to that, that will certainly exacerbate things. And I bring this up because when I was first powering things up and going through and manipulating the controls, and things were a bit crackly and poppy and all that stuff, and I mentioned that the relay had kicked in and out a couple times really quick, never repeated again. And I may have mentioned, I can't remember, that I was running it in the shop here for several hours since then, and not a problem with that. Again, mostly dirty controls, but anyways, there's a possibility that a cap, or maybe a few caps or so, were trying to reform. I don't know how long this unit was sitting, and like I said, if it was stored in unfavorable climate conditions and temperature and all that, and that's just worsening things over time because these caps are old anyways, then a lot of times caps try to reform, and you can have problems like that. So I want to mention that to the customer, because that's a situation that if you're not bringing it back to more favorable, controlled climate conditions, you may want to start doing that. It's not a good idea to just leave this at your camp, especially during the winter. So anyways, this receiver needs work, but I have a limited budget on this, so I can't really go in and do a full restoration or recap and really comb through and do all the detailed alignments and all that. It's just not in the budget. So I'm just trying to attack what I need to attack that I think is causing the immediate problems. For sure, the controls, as I've mentioned before, this is stuff that has to be done anyway to rule other issues out of the equation, with intermittent signal and signal dropping out because of filthy controls and so forth, as I mentioned before. So once that's removed from the equation, then I can hone in on other things, and at the very least let the customer know that, yeah, there is another problem unrelated to the controls, involving a signal transistor or so forth, and so on, bad cap, something starting to go faulty. But I want to get this out of the way. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and zoom on into the board and talk about that a little bit more, and we'll go from there. Okay, so let's get to testing these pots so I can show the customer what's going on here. And right now I'm just clipped on. I'm going to be working my way through the pots here, and so that we can see the needle transitioning through the pot's range. And we want smooth needle movement. We don't want any jitter, any dropping out of the signal or anything like that, indicating that there's problems along the resistive track, or or with the wiper. So I'm just clipped onto one side of the track, and of course the wiper in the center. And you can check both sides. You can go from one end of the resistive track, to the wiper, and then the other side of the resistive track to the wiper, and just kind of go back and forth and sweep. That's how you test one of these controls. So these two tone controls here, bass and treble, are detented pots, so they are click, 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 in other words, so they don't rotate smoothly. But if I zoom down here to the analog meter, and let me get the light out of the face of the meter here. Let me just kind of move this light. That's better. And I'll just kind of sweep this pot through its range, and it's not going to move real super smooth because, like I said, it's detented, but you get the point. And it's a it's a 50K pot, and I have it set to times 10K on the ohm setting. And you can see that when I click this pot shaft one way and then bring it back up, and you can probably hear the clicking in there. So everything is looking really good. This pot is responsive, and off camera I'm just going to check the other half of it, because remember, these are stereo pots, so there's two halves. So I will just show one half of each pot, and if there's any issues, of course, I'll come back and show you guys what's going on. But if not, I'm just going to sweep through real quick. Okay, here we are back up on the control board, I want to zoom in on something real quick so I can bring it to the attention of the customer. Okay, and here we are. I have my magnifier in place so we can get a bit of a tighter zoom on these two transistors here. Note the text on these transistors. These are A725s or 2SA725s. And these transistors here are sort of on the problem list. They are known to develop noise issues over time. Not in all cases, but you know, in some cases that will take place. I don't have enough information right now at this stage of the game to know whether or not these are part of the problem that, you know, I witnessed initially when I was getting some crackle and pop and the relay dropped out a couple times. I attribute that more to the controls just being really dirty because I was kind of manipulating them around. And again, like I said, I haven't experienced it again, and I was testing it for quite some time. Now, I'm going to leave everything open as it is. I have a few things I need to connect and all that, and I'm going to, audio test this thing again. Not on camera, though. I don't have the time to do that, but I am going to be, testing this. Now, if some significant problems arise and I'm able to determine that there's some components that are actively failing as I'm testing things or producing noise, then yeah, I'll probably roll some video footage again to share with you guys. But if everything checks out during testing, with these transistors as well, and also too, there's some 2SA726s on the main amp board that I'm going to take a look at. I'm not going to do that on camera. In fact, I haven't even removed the main amp board yet. I'm going to do that and just kind of check out what's on the board. When I'm audio testing, like I said, I'm going to try to get these known problematic transistors, these 725s and the 726s, to produce some noise if they're already kind of teetering on the edge. If I don't witness anything, if everything stays quiet, I'm just going to leave them alone. I'm not even going to change them out because, again, I have a limited budget. So I'm just going to spend some time determining the integrity of these transistors. And again, if everything checks out okay, I'm just going to leave well enough alone. The main thing I want to do is just run this thing for a while and just see what it does. And I'm sure it's going to be a lot better with these controls thoroughly cleaned out, re-lubricated. Also too, there's another thing I want to point out that I am going to do, that I have to do, and let me go ahead and zoom in on it. Okay, so on this little power supply board here, when I was going through earlier, running some tests and performing an inspection and just kind of combing around inside the piece of equipment here, like I always do, looking for, bulging caps, toasty looking resistors, discoloration, all that kind of stuff, connection issues, bad wiring, all that stuff that I always do. I also go through and, of course, carefully, touch the tops of cap cans and all that so I can gauge whether or not any of them are running hot. Sure enough, these two here were pretty toasty to the touch. Now I'm going to do a little bit more investigating on the power supply board. I'm going to check the values of various components, resistors and all that, make sure everything is in good health, that there's no other reason why these caps are running hot. I'm just anticipating that, like all of these caps in here, they're just old, they're degraded. And once they start running warm like that, when they get degraded and they start exhibiting higher ESR conditions, equivalent series resistance, their internal resistance starts to increase, well then, they start running hot. It's like a dog chasing its tail. The electrolytic starts to, degrade more, dry out. Capacitance will typically diminish in a lot of cases. ESR will increase, and in other words, these caps are headed for the malfunction junction. So I'm going to pull them out. I am going to test them, but I'm not going to do any of that on camera. If anything really noteworthy, pops up, well, I'll roll some video footage and share that with you guys, including as I'm audio testing, like I said, I'm going to monitor those 2SA 725s and 726 transistors and see if they start exhibiting some noise or distortion, any problems. If so, then I'll come back, roll some video footage, get everything on the scope, and go from there, and decide at that point if you know, if I'm going to replace them. I'm sure if they start exhibiting problems, you know, the customer is going to want them replaced. I only have a limited budget to work on this thing, which is why I'm just trying to target some specific areas, some known problems like controls and, you know, so forth and so on. And of course, these caps have to get replaced, because if I leave them in there, then, you know, they're gonna fail. They'll probably end up venting open or something like that. But anyway, so I have their replacements. So I'm going to end it here, and if anything noteworthy pops up, I will come on back. Otherwise, as I always say, peace, love, music, and the vintage audio that brings it to your ears. Till next time.
This is a poor man's shoe production.